Alright, hey everybody, Texas Trucker, we are back Friday night about 7:30. Got home from work, figured I'd jump out of here before we fire up the oven for supper. And where we left off, we were trying to debate best course of action. Kind of been thinking about it, and what I think we're going to do is probably now focus on getting the wiring out of the way. Anything that I can find that looks like it's going to be in the way, we're just going to try to disconnect. Also, I want to go through and of course take time to pay attention to where the wiring comes from, where it originated, if it was tucking under, going through, passing through, running beside, running along, all that kind of stuff, because it seems stupid, but it's really important when you go back to install. So my advice for you when you do this is to take pictures, draw it out, whatever. Pictures are easier and quicker. But for example, let's start back here. You've got that black at the top. That's going to be like a defroster duct, right? Which I did confirm. This dash here looks like it's cracked even more since we were last in. But the defroster ducts are in fact screwed in back there, so that kind of answers that question. Right here though, where you have that whole bundle of blue, orange, it comes out to all these connectors here. That's coming out of a plastic conduit back there, sort of from the top section. Now this next exit point that you see right there with sort of like a black wire loom around it, that's going to come in here. That would be like your stereo controls. And then this black loom right down in here, note that it's actually running through the sub dash. That's going to be important protection because this is the vacuum connectors, right? It looks like wires, but those are actually, just colored vacuum lines, very small colored vacuum lines. And so we're going to attempt to push this orange or amber colored connector back through the dash opening here, so of course it doesn't bind or pull when we get into that area. Now there's a whole mess of like orange and pink right here. That's probably illumination or gauge cluster stuff. Can't really tell what it's doing at this point in time. We'll figure it out. I've also kind of left this down here. I'm not quite sure what, if any, of those bolts will have to come out. It's likely the one on the side there, and then of course it would be mirrored on this side. We'll get a better look at it in just a second. As we look back in here, if the camera cord would get out of the way, that is a bulb kind of to illuminate, the change holder here. And then coming down, let me hop out of the truck for you. All right here. We've got a whole mess of wiring going to the steering column. Right now it's important, we've already done our gear selector indicator. That's not going to break off on us. But right here we want to pay attention to kind of how the factory routed everything. Seems to be fairly simple. Originates right at that black tape where it ends. And then we come out, we got a ton of stuff going on. Passes through some plastic. It's open and exposed. We got more loom there. Or tape, I should say, harness tape. You can kind of see some connectors here. Let's get a good look at that mess. So red, black, orange with a black tracer, pink, blue, yellow. There's a thicker red cable there. We've got another connector with some pretty small wires coming out, probably 18 gauge. Right here, kind of the turn signal indicator. We've got this, which that should be a multi plug-in pack. There's, I think, a 10mm bolt on the back of it. And if I get you, where can we be to see that? Down here, I guess. We'll have to crawl on the floorboard. Right there, that white plastic with all the wires going into it, that is another main disconnect. So we're gonna have to hit that. I think it is a 10mm as well. That should free up quite a bit. Anything past that is going to be like hidden really well, or a complete pain in the butt, kind of like that. We've got a red clip there, so that will probably come out. Disconnect from the column. There's more wires here, which I think they're running up maybe to the stereo. Don't really know from this angle. I'm trying to keep my head from clocking the steering wheel. Right here, that yellow clip, that is pressed through this panel, so that'll be fun. All these plastic connectors, kind of a pain in the butt. Got some more in there. That's going to be interesting. And then this piece here, I was trying to think, like, okay, why would I need to take that off? And then of course it occurred to me that would be way, way, way easier to get it around the steering column, right? With that on, you sort of have to go through the steering wheel or take the wheel off. With that off, you lose that. It becomes like a U-shaped channel, and you can just simply lift it up and over the steering wheel or the steering column. So makes sense to get it off. It looks like we've got our all too familiar little screw here. You could probably run a nut driver on those if you wanted to, but 1, 2 coming over. We got 3. There's one in the back there. There's another in that corner. Don't know what that's gonna go to. Probably holds whatever the CT assembly high would be. So just kind of, it's just a menagerie. You have to come through and find what you can locate and disconnect. The connections on the passenger side almost look like they're on the heater box, so that'll either be something that binds or is a non-issue. Now right here, I've threaded this back on so I can move the column around, but if you're ever curious how your tilt mechanism worked, right, you can see me kind of articulating it here like you would. And if you pay attention over on this side, let's see if you can see it. Right there, kind of see where that spring is, sort of in the middle of the screen, and I'm constantly flexing it. That's your detent. That's how the tilt mechanism works. Pretty simple stuff. Cool to see it unmasked though. And again, I'm sure there's a lot of connections that we just can't see because of the dash at this point in time. That's one advantage. If your dash is in worse shape than mine, it could actually be beneficial in this phase of the removal. But basically, I will just be going along, removing what I can. I will attempt to come back and let you know if I run into any issues or tips or tricks. Those blind side connectors, they're just always a pain in the butt. Trim tool or, you know, like a kind of a scraper type of a tool, we'll probably get them off. Again, I'm trying to reuse all the clips, so I'm going to be extra careful. But we'll see how it goes. So that's about where we're at, and I'll try to stick my head over there and see. I'm thinking maybe just that little side bolt on each end might free up, and the rest goes with the dash. Don't hold me to that, but we will figure it out. So that's where things stand right now. So I'm gonna get on working here and see what kind of progress we can make tonight. All right, so here we are. We've quickly taken this off. Again, it's just these screws you see there, essentially 4 and 3 per side. Again, you've got the 2 kind of within the channel that'll hold it up, 2 on the bottom, 2 here, and then the 3rd on this side right there. Of course, when you drop it, you're going to be, you know, suspended kind of by this loom. Again, pay attention when you reconnect. This one's simple. You got black and green. Don't cross them. Make sure they made up correctly. But what we need to do now in order to get this out of our truck and out of our way, we've got to get those clips off. But again, fairly simple there, and it does open up a bit of access for me. In addition to being easier to get the dash out, we're also going to have better access to everything in this passenger driver footwell. So I'll go get a trim tool, we'll get that knocked off. We'll then be able to pull this, clean it, paint it, do all that good stuff that, you know, is above and beyond. And then we'll, like I said, have more access to tear the rest of everything apart. So cool deal. All right, so laying down awkwardly, and there's something. Oh, it's the trim tool and a screwdriver. There's all kinds of stuff under my back and shoulder that's making this really bad, but there went the trim tool. So this is the stuff like I can see, but you can't see real well when I'm trying. Just took this out. There's the red safety clip, which you can kind of see that. This is a total pain in the butt. There's clips just like this on the other side. Man, if I could get this screwdriver from under me, that'd be great. Let's see here. There was these connections I wanted to try and showcase to you, which yeah, cool. You can totally see that, right? We're at a point I can't see the camera anymore, but I will have pictures eventually of all this stuff. But this is that CTM assembly box I mentioned. So we've got a green connector that'll sort of be closest to the dash, and then that white connector will be closest to the firewall. And I wanted to film from this angle for you, but good Lord, it's pretty ridiculous with the size of this camera. So this is just another vantage point for you. It's about all I can do. I twisted the handle on the trim tool, that little clip right here, the yellow one. I've got that brace out of the way, but I could not get those stupid plastic push pins out. They were disintegrating. And then there was a little rocker switch here on the back, you know, like to let it slide off, and somehow that finally released, even though I tried to do it and it wouldn't. So Anyway, I can't really film this because I'm one guy, and I'm gonna get everything out of the floorboard because it's digging into my back. And I will just get to work because this isn't working too good trying to film it. So I'll let you know if we run into anything issue-wise. How about that? Alright, I'm laying on my back in the floorboard and the camera's really close to my face and I can't really see good through it. Everything kind of looks blurry, but the green and the white, those are the connections that come into the bottom of that CTM assembly box. The green will be closest to the dash and the white will be closest to the firewall. This is all kind of by the brake pedal. And, right there, that kind of Star Trek looking piece above us, white and red, I just disconnected that. You'll want to slide that locking pin towards the steering wheel. And then over here, that sucker is quite the problem. You can see some pins. Let me see if I can contort myself for you. Right there, there's release pins here in addition to that 10mm bolt. The problem is there's pins just like this on the other side. And I don't know that the camera conveys it, but there's really not space for your hand and a tool to release the pins on the other side, sort of going towards the kick panel or emergency brake. So I can't film this very well, so I'm just going to work, but this is kind of what you'll run into. This is a lot more comfortable. Prior to filming this segment, I had the screwdriver underneath me. And as nice of a handle as it is in your hand, it's not so cool under your shoulder blade. So I'm just going to get to work, and I will let you know if we run into any issues. All right, we are back. It has been a while. It is Sunday. Sadly, I did not get much free time at all this past week to do anything. I had a roller go out on the dryer drum, and that's, you know, one thing leads to another. No free time, come home from work late, all that stuff. But the one night I was out here, I just basically laid on my back and struggled to disconnect things, and I think that's essentially what we did, trying to get you up to speed. All of the stuff that was back in there on those like really tough to reach connectors and clips, I've got those. Spoiler alert, that hood release, I just left the screws in there, you know, because they're threaded. That will stab you constantly. Be wary of that. Something that I think I also did that I haven't gotten to tell you, this little steering wheel cover, it's sort of like the gear selector part. You can see the top end right here. I went ahead and took that off, probably for disconnecting some clipped harness or something. But, like I said, when I don't get to film it and it's been a long time, this is something that ideally you would have like one full complete day or something, and you could just do this. If you want a break, you can take one. It doesn't impact you. I do want to note there are several spots where we've got the clips that broke off of the instrument bezel. Not a big deal. I'm also not sure. I'm about to the point. I think we've taken out 2 of the top you know, dash to cowl bolts, and then essentially we've got, you can't really see it too great, but there's a 13mm head. You'll need a socket on both sides to let the dash swivel. Of course, our plan is to take it out. This kit here does actually go to 13, and I did debate throwing this ratchet at it, seeing if it could break it free. I think it could. That said 13, that's typically where I'd switch to 3/8, particularly breaking something free, so I think that's what I'll do. Because technically I do, this kit came with that one, and I do have the standard one somewhere up here with a little Hazette number 2 on it. So I technically have a backup, but, you know, I figured I'd do what I usually do, not put it through too much of a pace. Not sure how tight those are, if they're rusted or crusted or not. There are also a lot of screws still, like these 2 here behind the instrument cluster. You can see this one really well. Other one is mirrored on the other side in the dark abyss. I don't know. I'm assuming that goes straight to the dash substructure that we'll be pulling out. There's a chance some of that should have been removed ahead of time. I don't know. Again, my initial thought was dismantle everything in the truck. Now I'm thinking it's best if we just take the whole unit out, get the top off, get the bottom off, paint it, go to town from that point, right? So that's at least tentatively my plan. I can't remember if I told you, but I've reinstalled the tilt lever so we can easily articulate that, get the column drop down, which we will have to do. The other thing that we're going to have to do, I can't see it too great, I'll highlight it better here in a second. We just need to drop these off. I don't know if they're 10s or what, but that will allow us to lower the column. Same design as the old school muscle cars. The 2 connectors over there, which is not that one, another one is up top. The ones that I think went to the heater box, I don't even know if we needed to disconnect them. I got them. As best I know, I want to say everything's disconnected. But again, where I fear that, you got the fuse box right here. That was another thing I did, is just pull the panel sitting somewhere. So there's a good chance when we drop the column and then roll the dash back, it may not come, because there could be hidden connections that I can't see from up top, on the side, or down below. So we'll have to investigate that. I'm also not quite sure how everything is divided. Like, do I need to back these two clips out, the harness connectors, or are they good to come and the harness will come out with the sub dash? I don't know. We're going to figure all that out. I also want to point out the pillar seal, which you can kind of see it. You really can't. Back in here, it should be up here, and that had dropped down, but again, LMC did include it. I also think I was too harsh on LMC. Coming in here, you know, like I'm basing my color off the seats and the door panels. The dash is actually a little darker. It's one of those things you don't really even notice it until, you know, you're critiquing something. But yeah, I would say light, dark, and we'll see how that pans out. But tool updates, the Braun light, I really do love that thing, but the battery sucks. The Astro light, I don't like the positions as well, but I do think the battery is superior. So it's kind of a catch-22 there. If we could bind the best features of both, we'd be really happy. But I think we're about ready, I guess, to drop the column, remove those two bolts, just back them out a little bit, let the dash roll, see if there's anything back there. If there doesn't seem to be, then I guess I'll lift out. The way it's designed, that sheet metal support, you know, you're gonna have slots and then kind of the roll point, you know, sort of, you know, stuff you've seen before. But I think that's about it. So again, my apologies on the rambly reintroduction, but again, this is kind of a refresher for me too. So I'll get my light, we'll get this drop down, we'll see how things go, and we will take it from there. All right, the camera's on my knee, so bear with me, but here we have a Philo flexible nut driver, right? Or a screwdriver. I'm gonna take a Vera power bit adapter, and then I'm going to throw on a long Vera extension, and I'm not going to have it locked because those are a pain in the butt to get off. And then we need an 8mm, which we've got on the Stavilla locking extension. And, let's see, we'll drive that home. And I've basically rigged this up now, right? You can see my Stavilla 8. We've got the long Vera extension with the spinner handle. There's the power bit adapter. And then, of course, the Philo. So I'm gonna thread this sucker down. This is plenty long. Oh, and it broke it free real nice. Let me show you what we've got going. This right here, it looks really stupid, I'll be the first to admit, but the problem is if you stop right there in a normal position, you don't have space for the ratchet to turn because of the dash, the A-pillar, and more importantly in this case, the windshield. So coming out here, check this out. I'm up to the grab handle, and it just, well, check it out, broke it free, zero issues. So this has paid dividends. Again, normal situation, you'd have to hold it real awkwardly, but with this flexible deal, I'm down here at a comfortable, almost like 90-degree position, and this is one of the things I had in mind when I bought all these flexible bit holders, and this has worked out beautifully. So if you recall, we removed two of these already. We've just got this one, the one there in the middle, or I should say the second to the middle, and then the one truly in the middle. So that may drop the dash a little bit. I still have the steering column in place, and I still have the side bolts holding it. You can see right there, we got our little 3/8 breaker bar and 13mm socket. So I'm gonna go ahead, spin these three off, and then we'll probably drop the column first, and then come in and hit these two side bolts, which you'll kind of see. I'll get a light on it better here in a second. So I'll get these done and we will be back. All right, so that worked beautifully. Again, when you install the dash, keep in mind you don't have to torque those down to 100 foot-pounds. Just install them lightly. Your goal is to not have squeaks. It's not to crack your brand new dash. I gotta say, when you disconnect this, you've got the spinner sleeves here from Vera, worked beautifully. Something I had seen, I believe seen, in the LMC video that they did. They said that all of these were equal length fasteners, or I mean not equal length, but unique length. And that would mean, you know, you've got 5 fasteners, and they're 5 different lengths. For example, the middle one might be the longest. They might get progressively shorter, vice versa. These 3 here are identical. This is the passenger side, farthest to the right, if you will, the middle right, and then the dead center, and they are identical. They look to be, as best as my memory recalls, the exact same as those guys. So I'm going to go ahead again, punch those out. This does work better with an awl, so I do recommend that as well, particularly if you have one. But I'll get those in place so we don't lose them. We can keep tabs on what they are. And then I guess it's time to drop the steering column. All right, apologies, I've got the fan going. It is hot. And, right here, we just removed the center and right side of the top dash bolts. Come in here now, we're going to drop the steering column. That is a 10mm that we'll need for that nut. And of course here on the other side you can also see that fastener, kinda. Alright, let me bring it down. It's not coming in great, but I mean, picture what you saw over here clearly, and it's on the other side too. So once again, a little 10mm and an extension to clear the drive shaft. Bear in mind, if you position this correctly, your steering wheel should sit down here on the seat. So if you sit way back, you got the gangster lean or something, maybe slide the seat forward, move it forward, reconnect the battery, whatever you got to do. But I don't know how much stress will be placed there on the firewall. We could potentially rig up something, maybe get a 2x4, but I'll probably feel it out first and see how things go. So I'm going to break those free and we will take it from there. Alright, so super weird stuff going on here. That's our little extension with our 10. Broke it free just fine here on the left hand side of the steering column. Coming into the right hand side though, it would not break the thing free. Like, it was just like the nut was just like fractionally too small. So I went and I grabbed some SAE sockets, and I thought, you know, maybe it's, you know, 3/8, 5/16, something like that. No dice. It was clearly 10 fit the best. Again, it broke the right hand side, left hand side free just fine. So I went and grabbed a 10mm wrench to put around here, and it just turned it effortlessly. So I'm not quite sure what's up. It's a 12-point socket, but for whatever reason the passenger side of the steering column didn't want to come free. So anyway, it turned free with the wrench, so I'll just go about it in that manner. It's one of those strange things, kind of makes you scratch your head. So again, pro tip here, you'll note I don't have this off all the way, even though it was turning and that one wasn't. Anytime you raise or lower something, it's typically best, not always, but most of the time, it's best to do it kind of progressively. Like if you make a quarter, break that free, break this free, turn this twice, turn that twice. That way you don't get any binding or any weird stuff going on. But anyway, I'm going to jump back to it and we should have the steering column drop. Alright, so this is a look at what you take off. Again, it is an assembly. The nut comes off with the washer. I would advise, what I wound up doing, what I found worked best, is lifting up, whether you lift from the top or just push from the bottom. Do that as opposed to just trying to use a steering column. It works way better. But I mark these left and right just, you know, for my own peace of mind. The other thing I did, you will note this black plastic piece here. Let's get some light on it. That used to be on the steering column. The only reason I moved that is because the 2x4 was just going to just flatten out the wires. So we've dropped the column just a little bit. I've got the 2x4 here. This is just one that I had randomly sitting around. Any length would work. Ideally, if it's taller than the brake pedal and keeps the height, you know, the weight off of that seal on the firewall, you're probably doing pretty good. Right here, I'm thinking I'm going to go ahead and take this thing off. It's just kind of in the way and annoying. I don't want it to get like hit or hold the dash up when I'm trying to wedge it out by myself. So I will attempt to get that off. I think it's just a little selector seal, like that, I don't know what it is, rubber or some material, plastic possibly. It's just like in a key little slot, and it goes around the gear selector. So I'll try to get that thing taken care of. And at that point, I think we're ready to just break free the 13mm and on each side and see what happens, because honestly I don't really know. They'll either be free and ready to come out, disintegrate and fall into a million pieces, come out beautifully, or there's like a ton of wiring still connected that we just can't see yet. So prior to doing that, all this stuff that I have kind of draped out, you know, for my reference, I'm going to go ahead and tuck back in, get out of the way of the dash as much as I can. and we'll basically just be winging it and see what happens. So again, nice little tip there just to protect, you know, the seal on the firewall, and again, remove any wiring. If you ever brace anything and you got something that would get crushed that you don't want crushed, i.e. a giant wiring harness, move it. And if you can't move it, find somewhere else to brace. The reason I selected that location is the brake pedal just works perfectly to support that. It kind of locks itself in place. So anyway, back to work I go. Alright, so you can figure what's happened here. We've broke it free, and we now have finally access to this sucker that's been hiding behind the weather strip the whole time. And, I don't really know what to expect, but I do know that I need 2 hands. But just to kind of prove to you where we're at, this is what I'm doing. I'm able to rock the dash out. I realize now I probably should have dropped this down into low gear. Right here I just swiveled that around. I didn't want to crawl under the steering column and try to find a disconnect. But it's rocking pretty good. Now the problem is I'm one guy and I don't know what to expect with this. The other problem is I'm limited on space. I've got the charger over there with a door. I've got a door here with a wall. And I'm thinking, honestly, I might carefully move that, some of those gallons or what blew up in the truck's back seat, and try to come out this way, just because I'd rather run into crud over here than the charger. So I've cleared out most of the tools. I'm now going to get this out of my way, maybe even raise the center console up. But yeah, a little bit of grease on my fingers from something, so we'll wipe that off. But I can't film this. I don't know what to expect. It looks like there is probably, for the sake of one-man shows across the country, the weather strip kicks out here. And that may be all that's holding it. I don't know. It's either that or there's screws we missed or wiring connections. Who knows? But I'm going to play with this and I will see what happens. I will do my best, assuming I get this out, to let you know what I did and what worked and maybe what to avoid, depending how things go. But let's see what happens. Alright, so we are back. Realize a couple of things I forgot to do, which over here you can see kind of the transfer case stick, right? And then you got the yellow airbag connector right about there where the hook is on the light. That is actually going to be a bolt that we need to remove, and there's one on the other side, so I need to do that. I also, the night that I was out here doing all the wiring connections in this region under the kick panel, forgot to disconnect the parking brake lever, which nothing I see ever talks about doing that, but I don't see how you pull the dash with that connected, so I'm going to go ahead and do that before we break a clip. And then, as I thought, now it turns out I guess it's a good thing that was connected, because had the dash have rolled forward it would be more of a pain. But back here there's going to be, see, kind of like we've got this bundle of wires here with the pink one, and then if you come down and you kind of have like all the blues, purple, the lime green, and the light pink, that stuff heads to the fuse box. I want to say there's 3 of them. There's a slight chance when I clear out the footwell I can get the camera in to show you with the dash out this far. I think all of those are going to have to disconnect, and I think that may be all that's left. Also of note, as I've tried to pull this out, any crack that was known has gotten worse. So I guess this is kind of a foreshadowing of what would have come naturally over time. This is one that I didn't even know existed. And you can kind of see, I guess, as I pulled it away, it sort of made itself known. So definitely a good time to do the dash. And the steering column I've dropped down, I've moved the gear indicator. I still don't know on these. I cannot see anything back there. I kind of want to say I think they'll come with it, but I could be mistaken. But we're going to hit those 3 connectors. I'm then going to do those 2 bolts last, because again, that's kind of like a big advantage to me right now, because it's holding the dash in place. And I might have to try and get help from someone. The issue is, you could technically manhandle this thing, don't get me wrong, but the bigger issue is, while this is shot, right, this dash top, the skin on the top, whatever you want to call that piece, it's done. We have a replacement. I don't really care if it shatters into thousands of pieces. Cleanup would be a pain, but it's fine. What I don't want to have happen is for any of the substructure, the lower end plastic, the back end plastic that this all attaches to, I don't want to crack that when I'm pulling the dash. And as a one-man show with tight quarters, that might be difficult. I try every time I jostle the dash around, I'm using the steel framework every single time. If I can't touch steel, I don't mess with it. Back here, I think you can kind of see if you pick out the defroster vent there, and then that thing that looks rusty is rusty. I try to manage it from that point. So my goal is to use the steel structure. I'm not going to crack the steel. I could potentially crack the plastic. So I'm going to hit these 3 connectors, take those 2 bolts out, and see what happens. So I also might, on the firewall back there, if you see where the steering column is, I might loosen those, because unlike an old car where this would just drop down a ton, it didn't really drop down much. And the LMC video, when he took off those 2 little spindle nuts, I mean, it was just to the floor almost, right? And mine did not do that. I've had to tilt it to get to this position. But I'll figure something out. So got the fan going, trying to stay cool, but this will be probably a considerable pain in the butt, getting a pick back in there to get those harness clips done. But I'll see what we can do. If we run into any issues, I'll let you know. Also, the 13mm Ghidorah wrench here, that was a lifesaver. With the parking brake, you just don't have a lot of space when you start backing this bolt out farther. So I finally got to use that in a real world application. Not the finest toothed thing in the world, but very robust. So I thought I'd update you the tool crowd here. But I'll break in on this. If I have to hit those, we will. I'm thinking those are 10mm bolt heads. Could be mistaken. But I'm going to get back to work, see what happens. Alright, so progress for you. I've got this totally disconnected. There's a clip. It's just like an old school door lock rod clip. I use the little Vera flat blade there. Came in, popped it off, it retracts itself in. Something super annoying is this kick panel insulation right here, and there's a hole in the panel. And so I guess there was at one time a little trim clip or something. I picked these up a while back. I think they're in a Summit tool haul, but Dorman 700 368, you can get a box 25 for like the same price as like 5. So I would suggest going this route. I don't know if this is going to work or not, but I'm gonna try to do it. And it's really kind of a pain with the light like it is, but I think we need to lift up. I'll take it. So one-handed, that's out of my way. The main thing, they're just ratcheting that back. I tightened the driver's side only, and every little stroke, anytime I got more than like 2 revolutions with our ratcheting wrench, I was getting back behind the kick panel insulation. So that's just a small minor thing, but it'll be super nice. What I'm going to do now is head over that way, and I guess we're going to take those free, because I've looked up there, there's the 3 big connections, and then there's maybe 1 or 2 smaller ones, and I'm wondering if it would be easier to get to them from behind the dash than it is under the dash. Again, if you didn't have an injured thumb, you know, that you could use, it might be advantageous to try from underneath, but I'm going to go ahead and pull those 2 bolts, and then we should have the dash free, minus what I think will just be these connections. So I'm going to see how that goes. Alright, so clearly this was not engineered by people that were thinking of the removal process in a typical fashion, because it's the complete backwards of what it should be, in my opinion. I've got the driver's side here tilted out at quite the angle, as you can see, and the reason for that is I'm attempting to get to these clips back here, which I can't really access from the bottom, because they have the clips turned towards the inside, so it's inaccessible. If they would have faced the outside when they designed the fuse box, it would have been a non-issue. Obviously, if you're thinking of modular installs on an assembly line, that would make no difference to those people. So that is a strike for the engineering department, in my opinion. I'm kind of back to the point where I'm considering, now that this is ratcheted out like this, coming in and wasting a ton of time. I think each vent, which we've got 4, you can't really see the 4th one because of the giant crack in the dash, but there would be 2 screws there. There's a couple of supports where there's like one tucked. It's a weird deal. It's not in the center where you think it would be. It's kind of like it snakes and makes a 90 and then it's there. So that's kind of a problem, but I've considered taking it off to see if I could then like come in from the top. I don't really know what amount of defroster duct maze is going to be going on, though, is a problem. The other thing I thought of, and this is before it was even in this position, is trying to take the fuse box out. And the problem is there's one Phillips screw that's really accessible, and the others are blind. One of them is going to be, the one you can get to is down here in the bottom, and of course it's from the inside of the dash threading out, not like these screws where you have the head here. It would be flipped from there. So you can get to the bottom one, but then the problem is I can't see anything over here. I assume there's at least one, but then the one up here, the 3 harnesses that are plugged into the fuse box that we would need to get out that we can't would be in my way of getting a screwdriver to the top to just simply drop the fuse box out. So it's just a total cluster at this point in time. And that's about all I know to tell you, really. So it's one of those things, you know, that's probably not even given second thoughts, you know, by engineering departments, but I would have thought this out a little bit better, even if you had the connectors back here. I can't really get this camera in. If we had like a GoPro or something, I could. My cell phone sort of fits. But again, it's just simple little things like the orientation of the clip plugging into the fuse box. If that was simply flipped, this would be very easy. It's not, so it's a complete pain in the butt. Even coming in down from the underside, like, you don't have accessibility because of this trim. And the trim is across the entire sub dash, so I don't know. I'm just gonna play around, try to figure stuff out. It's getting late. I really don't want to leave it like this, so maybe I'll just not eat supper tonight. But little decisions that people make and don't think all the way through turns out to cost a lot of time. You got to remember, if this wasn't me, if this was a tech at a dealership, and I'm sure they did a lot of these dashes that people were actually willing to pay to fix, it would impact them. So I think the way technicians would get around this is just crack all of the plastic mounts and not tell the customer, and then when there squeaks, they just say, oh, we couldn't get it to replicate, and lie through their teeth. But when you're doing the work yourself, well, that's some geese. It's quite hot for the geese to be back. So that's a distinct sound. That's definitely geese. Here we are at the tail end of August. It's plenty warm, so maybe it's going to be a bad winter. That would be fitting, right? Maybe we'll at least have the truck running by then. But I don't know if we'll take the top off. I don't know what I'll do. Again, it's mainly just, I think there's so many defroster vents here, I don't know that I could get good access to it. And again, if the clips would have faced out here towards the firewall or the back, they would be easy to get out, but they're not. So this is the same predicament you'll find yourself in. I just try to be 100% transparent with you, unlike all the other videos, particularly from the people themselves who just gloss over things like the parking brake release that a lot of people aren't going to understand or forget to do because it wasn't in the video and then break it. Here are the issues you run into. So I'm going to attempt to get these off. To their credit, they said, you know, hey, there's 3 clips here on our 2002, which, keep in mind, 3/4 and 1 ton, same body style here as the 01. But they did say there were 3 that were very difficult, but it would have been nice if they would have at least showed it, because unlike me, the one-man show, they have film crews there for that stuff, right? And just a little extra time, you know, would have been much appreciated. But we'll figure it out, and I'll let you know what worked for me. Alright, so gonna do you solid a little better than the installation video, which I've come more and more to despise. But if we come in here just simply to the windshield side, it's kind of glaring, but you can see the top connector, we've got blue, and then we've got like a white, and then we've got what looks to be a beige. There's also green down below. Now the issue is, like, if I came in and touched right here, right, we don't have the clip that's on the inside. That's why this is such a pain in the butt, and it's not going well for me. So I'm going to continue trying to do this blindly and see what happens. Alright, so before the Astro totally dies, I finally got the first clip. It's the blue one, and again, just the way it's oriented here, you've got the clean side with no clip towards the back of the firewall, which is where you would prefer the clip when you're trying to dismantle it, but it's on the inside, meaning you have to come reach your hand around. You can only get one in there. You have to squeeze and try to pull at the same time. It's extremely tight. Again, still can't even fit the camera in here. Got it out. What I've done in the meantime, trying to get to the fuse box, I decided that was actually a pretty good idea. I've gotten, I think, 2 of the screws done. Note the anti-rattle pad there. I didn't even know that was a thing. But I started taking the lower dash screws off, and then some in the back. I've got them all labeled right here. Again, I know that seems stupid, but it helps to kind of lay everything out for you. This, I think we could go through some. I think we've had two, a support piece and one on one side of the duct that are already broken. So that's unfortunate. But since I was able to get that first one, it gets more and more difficult the deeper you go because you have less and less access. But I'm going to continue trying to do that, and then maybe I can just whistle the thing out somehow. I don't know. You really need two people. But that is a possibility. Going the other route, we may have to do that. It may be a combination of the two. Just wanted to update you again before the light totally dies. Alright, you can probably see a lot of pink on my hand. That's where it's been crushed and smushed and all kinds of stuff. Coming in from the bottom with this lower dash assembly sort of pulled back just a tad, I was able to go through with my trusty VH flat blade there. And we were freeing the bottom one, which was the brown connector, which I don't even have in my fist right now. And that gave me the ability to come in and deal with this one, which is extremely stiff. This white one is in the middle. You've got blue on the top, white in the middle, brown not pictured in the bottom. And somehow I got these two freed from the bottom, this blue, and we actually somehow did from the top. Don't ask me how, but this harness, which clearly goes back into the firewall, even though you can't see it too great, it is freed up. The brown one was. There's still like two connections into the fuse box, and I'm not sure if they are part of a dash harness that will come out with the dash assembly, or if they are actually part of something going to the firewall. If that's the case, we've got to disconnect them. If not, they can pop out. I don't know the answer to it, unfortunately. This is where things sit right at the moment. And all I really know to do, if this is free, is like lift up over the top of the steering wheel, I guess, and then try to drag it out. It's going to be really hard with one person. It wouldn't be easy with two, but it'd be much better than just one person. So basically got two from the footwell on my back. Tons of battle scars here, but well worth the light. Looks like it's about totally gone, so we at least beat that. So I may try to lift this thing out and just see what happens, and then if it seems to encounter resistance, I'll try to get those other 2 or 3 connections out. They're not near the size of those, so they should be a little easier. Plus we have better access with those out of the way, so we've at least accomplished that much. Alright, so behind that black box there's a bundle of cables that looks like it's getting pulled. I can't figure out what it is. I thought maybe it was the vacuum bundle. That doesn't seem to be the case. I don't know. I'm going to try to mess with that. But the problem is over here, and again, this is something that videos just seem to glaze over. So, right here, you would think everything is free, right? Everything seems to be separate, particularly this little purple, white, and black setup here, right? Not the case. It's disconnected, obviously, from where it was connected to, but when you come in, you'll see that blue box there. My light's kind of dying. You'll see the blue box here off of this main harness, and then you've got the white plug where that plugged into. Well, for whatever reason, this taped harness, which you can kind of see right here with the traffic fingers tracing, it comes back into this bundle. So I've got to get this off, and the problem is it's not wanting to come off, and it's already been disconnected, so it's just like a plastic rail. I'm trying to get that done. And that's where I sit right now. So it's like 9:33, no supper yet, but you know, this is kind of the priority at the moment. So I'm also going to try to get on a step stool and see if I can pull that bundle through behind that black box. But anyway, I'm going to get back to this, see what we can figure out. Alright, so I had to break that stupid clip. There's just absolutely no way getting the thing off. I'm talking about the thing down there on the, you know, like main body plug harness thing. Just would not come off at all under any circumstance, no matter what I did. When I did that, the only thing holding us up, of course, was what looked to be the vacuum lines. I couldn't really reach it because of the dash, so I kind of rocked it back into place. When I did that, that little chunk there rolled out. It's what would have been here, you know, kind of our mount point to the dash, so it just stress fractured all the way. I decided then to rock this back into place. When I did that, it was fine. I've come over here, I've since pulled off all of our hardware here because I decided it might be advantageous to have this busted mess off of the top in hopes that I can actually then lean in and reach down and figure out what is going on. I don't know if it is just like a cable tie somewhere or a body plug, like a little, you know, push pin clip type of a deal holding it in place, but that's definitely not something that I want to rip and pull on again. Nothing I've read, nothing I've seen said anything about having to do anything special with the vacuum lines off of your HVAC controls minus disconnect it. So again, something that was just completely glossed over, possibly because it's a pain in the butt. But anyway, this is let's see if that'll stand up. Not really. Let's try that. That'll work. This is actually totally off, and the defroster came with it. I noticed it's not really super easy for you to see, but down there in the corner, kind of where there's like a hair or something for some reason, girlfriend side of the truck, there is the screw that holds this vent into place. And it looks like a slip type of a coupling or fitting. Again, I did take the screw off of the side. I've left these in place. You'll note a lot of these were just already totally busted. So whenever we get this out, we can free these again, each side of the defroster vent. Super easy for you to see because they've got, you know, tan interior components. This one is still intact, but I'm wanting to free these as best I can. So then, like I said, maybe we'll have a cheap shot to figure out what's holding up with the vacuum lines. But I'm going to be working on that. It is now about 10:30 Sunday night. Still no supper. Don't have anything to drink out here. But I'd really like this out of the dash, or at least at a good stopping point. So I'm going to keep on trucking. All right, it's a little after 11. I still haven't had anything to drink or eat, but I think I figured it out. I think it's just a clip. It's really hard to get my head in here with the camera, but I think if you just look at the bundle of Christmas colored wires there, the red and the green, there's like an electrical tape on conduit and a loom, that little gray thing that I know it's not in focus, but just run with me. The gray thing is a clip. I'm gonna get the thing off. I gotta get something to drink. All right, so it is Monday after work now, and I've got to shed some light on things for you. Went in last night, it was about 11:45, had a bowl of cereal, and called it a night. But watch this little trick. Turn the light on, things come into view. You're gonna see a mess down here, and you're thinking, is that saran wrap or what in the world? That is tape. It apparently was tape with foam on it. Now, I told you, and you think we got some clips where we were trying to pull the dash away and we were running into an issue where there was just a cluster that looked a lot like the vacuum lines here that we disconnected from the HVAC controls. There's really no way for the plug to go through there without deforming it. And I knew it would connect down here, and as I snake under the half-drop dash, you can see a connection. You'll also see a lot of debris under that connection that is foam that was originally on that tape. The reason we didn't disconnect that is I didn't know it was there because it was covered in tape. So once again, that's something that things gloss over in terms of write-ups and videos that I've seen. There is a good chance that maybe all that stuff was already taken off because it's been, you know, removed by the dealer. It was removed by a repair shop. This is all original. This is as it left the factory. And that explains my problem, and that should now let the dash relinquish itself. So that problem was solved, and I'm going to jump now to the other side of the truck and show you something similarly interesting. Also, before I do, as we snake out, pro tip, those screws that were constantly scratching me, turn them in. They're threaded through that hood release. Just back them on out to where the thread's not going to stick you. I wish I would have done that a lot sooner. Anyway, I'll hop over there and show you something else. In fact, I'll take you with me for a nice little segue of what once was and what will soon be. So, we're going to come over here to the passenger side, and you'll notice something in the truck. All right? Snaking thing with more foam. Now, originally, this was routed under the dash. In fact, it came out right there in the big rectangular cavity. If you're smart, And you know, rectangular cavity and snaky thing, and particularly that end, you would know that that's the antenna. Now the antenna was also supposed to disconnect. I think this is the last thing I did last night. I thought, you know what? I can't find where it unplugs. Screw it. We're just going to go ahead and unclip it, which it would have been in these clips. I don't know that you can see it too well, but trust me. Well, there's a couple here and there. And then it kind of snakes under the dash framework, does a whole bunch of things. But lo and behold, here in the daylight, you know, keep in mind it did get dark on me last night, but here in the daylight, there's another round of that really weird tape. Now this foam, kind of like pipe insulation, that stuff's intact. You can probably get some dust off of it. There's nice wire loom tape over it here and there. It's labeled. But you get over here, that's why this black plastic bag is here. That's like sound deadener insulation from the kick panel area. But right there, hidden in the deep, deep recesses of foam-covered tape, as best I can tell. Keep in mind, I deal with old cars that are usually not original unless they're like, you know, four-door donor vehicles. And by that point in time, everything like this, 50, 60 years, you know, it eats away, it's gone. Truck's only 20 years old, but I don't know what the point of that would be. I don't know if it was to keep people from finding it. But it certainly did a number on me. But if you look carefully, especially with the daylight and this artificial light coming in on it, that would be our disconnect. Now, this wasn't done for nothing. It's not a total loss because, again, I do hope to be able to pull the lower dash structure, flip it around, pull the defroster vents possibly. I'm not sure how that's all going to exactly work out till we have it out. And I'm wanting to paint the dash framework if at all possible. We may get frustrated, we may just, you know, feel time constraints and say screw it, but that's initially the plan. And if that's the case, it's needed to come off anyway in order to do a good job painting. So, but that said, if you have an original truck, maybe you know, picked it up from your grandparents, or it was in the family, not driven, and you wind up with it for a first vehicle, or you're giving it to your kids or something, you buy something from the old guy in town that just putted around and took care of his stuff, you might run into this issue too. So when you're replacing the dash, maybe you're servicing it, whatever you're doing, just even simple radio stuff, look for weird tape with a lot of nasty looking foam on it, because it apparently wraps the connection for the antenna and it wraps the connection for the vacuum lines. Again, what that plug is actually vacuum lines that go to the heater box. So had I have known that, we would have saved ourselves a lot of time. As is, you can see my little 2x4 here propping up this side under the steel, not the plastic. There's a little bit of steel there. But what I'm going to do now is spin off these 13mm headed bolts and hopefully have some help. Maybe get this thing out again. My plan, if all goes well, is to, that's rust over here from fingerprints, most likely me, because I'm the only one that's touched it. But what I'm going to do is have this person, which might turn out to be me, lift up over here. The driver's side's probably heavier and more awkward though. But anyway, if I can clear the steering wheel and get it maybe onto the seats and then out, well, that's what I'm hoping for, over towards the golf bag. Which, that'd be something nice to do, right? But hey, eventually we'll have this done, but that is the tentative plan. I'm not going to be able to film that, but again, I have no idea how it's going to work. As best I know, there's absolutely nothing here. Those were the last three things: the antenna, the similarly weirdly covered vacuum lines, and then that clip that had a harness that for whatever reason tied back into the main one that I just had to break off because, you know, I was past the point of being concerned with it. So anyway, you know, new day, fresh mind, whatever. This probably will encounter problems. I think the trick here is going to be to, whatever you can do, always try to have the steel structure in hand. For example, if I wind up over here, I'm going to lift by this area, kind of the underside of where the airbag goes and the glove box meets, and possibly the brace back there. Because if you were to come in and just grab here by the plastic or by the defroster vents, you're going to A, probably pull the vents out or damage them, and B, given what we've seen with this dash, even though this seems to be a different material, I don't want to take any chances. I would advise you to do the same thing. If at all possible, do not lift the dash by the plastic, lift by the steel. Maybe it would survive, I don't know, we may have to do a little bit of it, but if I can just get this thing out of here, I can come in, I can figure out if I can clean it or not, if I can paint it. If we can't paint it, we'll at least clean it. We'll be able to get all the defroster vents on properly, get everything snugged down, because it is a total pain in the butt to reach anything on that back cowl side. So it should be the better way of doing things. Hopefully it all goes smoothly. And if it gets out and I'm able to paint it, we'll probably have that as a standalone sort of disassembly, prep, and paint. But keep your fingers crossed. Hopefully we get something cool out of this. But the dash will hopefully be exiting the truck here shortly. Alright, here's a little action for all the people here from the tool side of the channel. We got the Hayco fender covers. Again, I got two because the first one I liked and I absolutely soaked it in antifreeze. It looks super clean though, much more so than this one. That said, I've got them covering the seats, and that's because I needed them to for the dash. So, things have changed real quick. This actually went fairly well. Personally, I think it would be easier to come out the passenger side, but again, I didn't want to, run into the Charger. I'd rather run into the crud over there. So the biggest obstacle, at least what I did, is just you've got to lift over the steering wheel, and then I've got a really good tip that involves the crud you see right there. But here it is. This is the heater core. This is the cowl. Now, I noticed last night, you'll see here this white tab, that's where kind of a plastic insert, that's where obviously one of the 5 cowl mounting bolts goes. If you come over here to the dead middle, it does not have one. I don't know if it broke, I don't know if it fell. It doesn't really seem to make sense that it would be gone and the other 4 are perfectly intact. What I believe the issue is that it wasn't there. I saw I think 2 other videos I watched super late last night, and nobody mentioned anything, but I noticed when I could that their trucks didn't have them either. Obviously, this being a black truck, it stands out more, but if you've done this, I'm curious, do you have a center pad or not? But here is the heater core, right? The heater box, the heater core, everything. That is the factory heater core. It actually doesn't look bad. Again, once you see that fancy ground strap there, that's designed for that not to corrode and rust. Mileage may vary. Again, I'm someone, I don't really use the heat or the AC. That's really rare. Like if I've got, family in the truck or a girlfriend that's real picky, which that usually doesn't last long with me, we'll go ahead and run the heat. But otherwise, I'm a guy that just drives with my windows down or cracked. That's just how I've always been. Comes from being an old school, I guess. Literally with the old cars. But everything there, doesn't look too bad. Again, by taking the dash out, we can clean that, which is going to be super nice. I see, I don't know if that's a crack or just an overlap seam. It might be a seam, but then again, I'm not quite sure. Everything looks to be in pretty good condition in terms of this. It's amazing how much space you have with the dash gone. I guess if you're tall, just get rid of the dash and you're home free. Now, coming back this way though, this shop is a mess. Here is the dash, what's left of the dash. This is what I call, we've got the metal frame, right? We've got the defroster vents behind it, and then we've got the plastic kind of like sub-dash structure. What I'm hoping to do is come in and take out an awful lot of screws. We'll just run through them while I'm here filming. Don't have a ton of space left on this card, but you can see glove box area. We've got 2 on the perimeter. Across the bottom we have 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Across the top we've got 2. Here where the cup holder would be, we've got 2 screws. Coming up, there's 1 right there. I think these 2 held the cup holder in, if I'm remembering correctly, but this one has nothing to do with the cup holder. It's just structure to structure. Coming up to this kick out, we have another screw. Don't know. Okay, ashtray. We've got 2 screws there. I think there's the light bulb still in place. Now here, okay, there were 4 of these. I could not see that in the dark last night, but 4 on each side. I'll have to add that to my little chart of screws. I've obviously pulled some of these again when I was trying to get back in there and remove harness clips. We had 2 behind the gauge cluster. That would be here and here. And that's really about it. Everything kind of north of that line, this bottom below the instrument cluster and radio, Typically screws up there are going to have these red velvet, what I know it's felt, but it's more fun to say velvet, anti-squeak pads. They're going to correlate with the top dash, the dash that we picked up from LMC, whereas everything down below is typically going to be substructure to the metal frame. On that note, there are two here. I've taken those out as well because, again, I was trying to get those ridiculous clips out. And coming back over here, you're going to have the same thing on this side. This one is like eerily close to being of no service at all. Maybe we can plastic weld it. But the tip I have for you, the biggest issue getting this dash out of the truck was this right here. If you recall, this is a center section. This is where the airbag module is. Obviously, it plugs in like that. What I would advise, and what I think happens, I'm pretty sure that's going to be a 10mm. We need to take these two nuts off. It looks to me like that is going to just lift this bracket off. These will dig into your seats, they will hang, they will catch up on the steering wheel. They're the awkward source. You've got the end pivots, you know, like right here, that are kind of a problem. These are a huge problem because they extend farther down and they're sharper, if you will. It is riveted on this back side, so I think we would just spin the nut off and the plate would come. So I'm going to get that out of my way. I think I'm going to do the same thing when I install the dash. Is that going to be good or bad? I don't know, but we're going to find out. I am running out of space here. That is a huge tip I've never seen anyone mention. I think it's going to pay dividends. I will try to showcase the back side to you, but I first want to see if I can get this front structure off. If I can do that, it'll be way easier to manage everything. So I'm going to work on that. Just turn some screws here for a little while and see what happens. Alright, so I flipped the dash over. I took all the screws out on the front side, then I put 3 back in, one on each end and one in the dead middle. And I'm attempting to see what is involved in getting the substructure free. It seems like the vents were going to be an issue, and so I thought to myself, hey, maybe the vents are bolted to the back of the dash, and this is my first chance to get to see back here. So you will note this, particularly because of the nice piece of plastic dash that's on there. That was one of the bolts that secured the dash. Then around each of the defrost vents, you're going to have 2. Here we have a support beam, again, conveniently with part of the dash. Here we've got another one around the defroster vent. Some of these I was able to actually get out that weren't already broken. These 2 are gone. That's gone. This still has part of the dash, and then we get to the other support structure, which we have taken care of. Now, if I come in and start looking around, you can see this, I guess that's actually wiring right there, so that's not part of the defrost vent. But down here, sneakily, if we trace that, you're going to see a screw that goes from the sheet metal to the duct. Coming around, sticking with that sneaky motive that we've got going, you've got one way back in there where the silver tab is, not one here, so not quite perpendicular. Then off of this support we've got another one, and that may be it. So I don't have a lot of space left on this card. What I'm going to do is just start pulling these screws and see if we can lift, you know, in this case, the metal framework away from the rest of everything. So let's see what happens.